So we arrive again at that unfortunate place where I have to have two more inductees to the wall of shame. And this video really is only possible because of the previous video that I did on Contemplative Prayer. If you haven't watched it, go watch it. This Seventh-day Adventist author wrote this book warning, I'll just say, Adventists and the world about the evils of contemplative prayer, and he did a good job highlighting those evils of contemplative prayer. So this author, too, in this book, cited Rick Warren and talks about Rick Warren in this very book, the Purpose-Driven Life. This is the Purpose-Driven Church. But he cites Rick Warren as an advocate of contemplative prayer because Rick Warren cites contemplative prayer authors in his book, which is like no kidding to me. Rick Warren's a local guy to me. I already know the nonsense that comes out of that church. No surprise there. But then, as I was collecting all the favorable contemplative prayer quotes and all the Adventist literature, I stumbled across Biola professor J.P. Moreland. And I went, okay, this is where it gets interesting now. Before we delve into the content, let's be reminded of this. First, 2 Corinthians 6:14 to 17. It's about married people. And the principle here is don't be yoked up, don't be together with unbelievers. Be separate from them. So yeah, I said this before in other Wall of Shame videos. If you've seen them, yes, I understand this is marriage. But it's talking about the most intimate union of all, which is just two people. But the principle is do not be united with unbelievers. And that's a very good principle for us to carry through to today. Let's add to that Titus 1:7-11. For an overseer, now we're going to talk about someone who's overseeing. Verse 9, that person must hold firm to the trustworthy word as taught, so that he may be able to give instruction in sound doctrine and rebuke those who contradict it. For there are many who are insubordinate, empty talkers, and deceivers, especially those of the circumcision party. Circumcision party are the Pharisees, are the Jews. So we have Titus here writing against empty talkers, deceivers, Sabbath keepers. Let's go on to the next one, which really pertains to this one here. Both these men we're going to talk about here are teachers, and not many of you should be one because you will be judged with a greater strictness. And then lastly, underneath it, you got to pay careful attention to yourselves and all the flock. So I kind of noticed in the Adventist literatures there's this admiration in Adventism for Rick Warren. So I'm just going to show you this one example here. Though I want to say two or three more. But let's just look at this one right here, this Adventist magazine, August 20th of 1992. And I want you to know this is from an Adventist pastor. Here he is in the middle of the page, Seventh-day Adventist pastor. And look what he says about Rick Warren. Look at page 19 on the top. When I visited this church in 1987 and again in 1988, is he telling me he went to a Sunday church? Is he telling me he went to church on Sunday? Which I find very interesting. But he visited Rick Warren's church. He came out here to Southern California and did this. The very next box beneath it. Rick Warren is talking about how to increase membership in his church. And then he says in point 3, we would do well to implement some or all of the preceding methods more fully. It's about church growth. Page 20 on the right, where it says creative attention holding. Rick Warren interviewed 300 unchurched residents in a door-to-door survey. And then you see early 1989, Hybels preached a 5-part series on the Willow Creek Church. This, what you see going on here, what Rick Warren has done, there was a movement at the time, go survey the community, and it came out of this Willow Creek Church. I think it was Illinois perhaps. But go survey the community, find out what they want, and then do it. And you know what it turns out to be? You know what the average person wants? Very, very, very short sermons, very surface level, and a lot of entertainment. And that's really what characterizes these all called seeker-sensitive churches. Rick Warren's church is a seeker-sensitive church, full of nonsense. And so what Adventists want to do, they want to incorporate the nonsense of the seeker-sensitive movement of Rick Warren. And then I found this magazine, Ministry Magazine, March 2001. The author of this is Rick Warren. He writes to the magazine and says, another outstanding job on the January issue of Ministry. I felt very, every article was a winner. Keep up the great work. And I thought, what are you doing writing in Ministry Magazine? Keep up the great work. All right, Rick Warren, got to send you an inquiry. I know you're retired fairly recently from the church, and I'm sure someone at the church ought to be able to talk to us and give us your stance on this. So I sent this, October 1st of 2024. I said, hey, I just came across the Seventh-day Adventist Church magazine called Ministry Magazine, March 2001. And I said, I noticed that Rick Warren had congratulated the Seventh-day Adventist magazine on another great issue. Was Pastor Warren a regular reader of Ministry Magazine? And does he believe the Seventh-day Adventists are a Christian church? And bam, I hit the send button and it says success. And that was October of 2024. And I waited and I waited and it just went dark. It's like, all right, here we are again. That was October 2024. Here we are now, February. I say exactly the same thing I said in October, but I start off with, hey, I reached out and touched you in February. How about an answer? And boom, I hit it. Okay, success. They got the message. And absolutely no reply. You know what? I'm not going to keep doing this dance with the nonsense that comes out of this church here. I think I'm done. So in summary here on Rick Warren, he is an advocate of the heretical contemplative prayer movement. And evidently he's a supporter of Adventism. So those of you that are not Adventist and you think Saddleback Church out here in Lake Forest, California is a place to go, no, it's not. It is not a place to go. It's not a place to be trusted with any spiritual guidance or advice. Stay away from Rick Warren, his silly books, and the church. Avoid it. Next, let's look here. How about this one? J.P. Moreland. Here's his Twitter page. Official Twitter account. J.P. Moreland. Professor, philosopher, author, speaker, mobilizer. I like that. Mobilizer. Here's another thing about J.P. Moreland. I can find him at Biola University. Right? He's at the Talbot School of Theology. And what's his biography? Look on the bottom of the page. I know it's really small text. It says J.P. Moreland, distinguished professor of philosophy at Talbot School of Theology, Biola University, etc., etc., etc. So you should be reading this and going, okay, so what's up with that? Well, let me tell you. As I was researching, again, the previous video on contemplative prayer, and particularly when I was finding all occurrences in Adventist magazines for Dallas Willard. Remember Dallas Willard now. Dallas Willard. If you haven't watched the previous video, go watch it. But for those that have, review, Dallas Willard is called the twin of Richard Foster because they are both Quaker mystics. And they both met, or both linked up together at the San Fernando, California Quaker Church. Dallas Willard is an advocate of contemplative prayer and a very popular author. Keep that in mind. And then I came across this. Ministry Magazine, May of 2009. The lead article is by J.P. Moreland. What in the world are you doing writing for Ministry Magazine? And when I got to the magazine, I turned the page. Then I found this here on the red box, which I'm going to blow it for you now, and it says this. But since the 1980s, especially in the writing of Dallas Willard, the evangelical church has recovered a broader gospel that, in my opinion, And I got, first I'm thinking, why are you writing in Ministry Magazine? You're treating them like they're brothers in Christ. Second, why are you quoting a Quaker mystic? I thought, okay. So I went to Twitter to see if I could message him directly. Here's his Twitter page. No, I couldn't message him directly. But he gave us a link there. You see in the middle, jpmoreland.com. Okay, fair enough. I went to jpmoreland.com. Oh, look, it has a Contact Us section. I clicked on it, and I got this message you see in the middle. Due to J.P. Moreland's teaching and writing commitments and priorities at Biola, he is not able to reply to direct messages via this site at this time. Oh, okay. So I can contact you. I can give you a donation on Twitter. I saw that. But in other words, don't bother talking to me. So what I did is, I did this. I started posting comments in February. I said, like, comment here. Let me just blow it up for you on the next page. Sir, I first tried the contact us link, but it returns an error and states the page is not found. Since that page is broken, I've used this blog for comment. And I told him I've been researching Adventism. I see you wrote an article in Ministry Magazine. All I want to know is, do you believe Seventh-day Adventists are Christian? I said, and I'm telling him, hey, to be clear, I do not. And I can provide you quotes, but I want to know your opinion. February 24th, I posted that message. And I heard nothing. I did it again on March 2nd, on March 4th, these are on other places in Twitter. And then I did it again on March 6th and March 24th. And then I thought, I went back to his page again, and that's when I saw the like, that's Facebook, and the X post on Twitter, and I thought, well, maybe I have to click on that right there that you see with the arrow, and maybe that'll get his attention. So I did that, try to get his attention. And what do I get? I get ignored, is what I get. So in summary, J.P. Moreland writes for Ministry Magazine, absolutely refuses to explain it and defend it. You know, maybe he just could write me back and say, whoa, I didn't know they were not Christian. Because that's what I still think most people don't know. But he doesn't even have the wherewithal to do that. So, by the way, making it very hard to contact you too. Okay, fair enough. Then I'm going to have to do this video if you don't want to be contacted. He writes for a magazine which denies the atonement of Christ and preaches a twice cursed gospel. So when he's asked, he goes dark, he goes silent. Then in his article, he writes approvingly of a Quaker mystic. I'm thinking, this guy should not be consulted for anything. Because obviously, in just these two data points I've seen by him, his discernment is severely lacking. Now, of course, I already know the discernment is lacking for Rick Warren, because over there it's a theological clown show that takes place every Sunday. So I know both these authors now. Stay away from, be warned about. Neither one had the courage to explain. And you know, and this is why they both deserve their picture and their place on the wall of shame. Too bad there are too many Christians in the world today who write approvingly of Seventh-day Adventism, and then when asked about it, either hide, don't reply, or just double down on their defense of Adventism, even when they're given the evidence of the denial of the atonement and preaching of a false gospel. Well, anyway, for this, Rick Warren, J.P. Moreland, you earn your place on the wall of shame.